On Christmas Day 2016, the world lost one of the most influential pop icons of our time. Born Georgios Panayiotou, George Michael went from a shy London schoolboy to a global superstar with Wham and beyond, selling 100 million records. But few understood the struggle behind his stardom. How did a holiday classic, explosive fame and private pain, shape the life and death of this music legend? The real story starts long before the spotlight. Georgios Kyriacos Panayiotou entered the world on June 25, 1963 in East Finchley, London. His father, a Greek Cypriot restaurateur, and his English mother, who was once a dancer, raised him in Kingsbury before the family settled in Bushey, Hertfordshire. Growing up, George was shy, wore thick glasses, and often felt out of place. He later spoke about never being comfortable with his looks or his place in the world. Music became his escape, a way to find acceptance and control in a life that sometimes felt uncertain. Everything changed at Bushey Mead School. In the halls of that secondary school, George met Andrew Ridgeley, outgoing, confident, and quick to spot George's talent. Andrew saw something in him that others missed. Their friendship formed fast, rooted in a shared love of pop and soul records and a mutual hunger for something bigger than their suburban surroundings. Andrew became George's loudest supporter, nudging him onto the stage and into the spotlight, even when George doubted himself. The two started experimenting with music, first in a short-lived ska band called The Executive, playing local gigs that barely made a ripple. But the spark was there. Andrew's brash energy complemented George's introspective drive, creating a partnership that would soon move beyond the quiet corners of Bushey. George later said he always knew he would make music his life, but it was meeting Andrew that made that ambition real. Together they set out to prove they belonged. Two teenagers dreaming up songs in bedrooms, plotting a way to turn insecurity into something the world could not ignore. Wham! Exploded onto the British pop scene in 1982, but it was the next few years that turned George Michael and Andrew Ridgeley into global icons. Their debut album, Fantastic, shot straight to #1 on the UK charts in 1983, powered by punchy singles like Young Guns Go For It and Bad Boys. Behind the neon shorts and sun-soaked videos, George was quietly writing and producing nearly every song, shaping the duo's sound with a confidence that belied his age. At just 20, he was crafting hooks that stuck in your head for weeks. The group's image, colorful, cheeky, and a little rebellious, was no accident. Wham! Leaned into the energy of the era with Choose Life t-shirts and poolside parties in Club Tropicana. But beneath the fun, George was already steering the ship, obsessing over details in the studio, determined to make each track pop. In 1984, they broke through worldwide with Wake Me Up Before You Go, a song George wrote in a burst of inspiration. It soared to #1 in both the UK and the US, cementing Wham! As one of the decade's defining acts. That same year, George penned Last Christmas. Recorded in August, he filled the studio with holiday decorations to conjure the right mood, then played and sang every part himself. Released in December 1984 as a double A-side with Everything She Wants, Last Christmas became an instant classic, peaking at #2 in the UK and returning to the charts every year since. Even as Wham! Ruled the airwaves, the seeds of George's solo ambitions were already taking root, his songwriting and production instincts setting him apart from the crowd. George Michael stepped into the solo spotlight with a confidence that caught the world off guard. In 1984, Careless Whisper soared to #1 in nearly 25 countries, its unforgettable saxophone hook and bittersweet lyrics setting a new standard for pop balladry. Though still part of Wham! At the time, the song was unmistakably his. Written when he was just 17, refined through relentless studio work, and performed with a maturity far beyond his years. Audiences responded instantly, turning it into his signature song and hinting at the creative force he was about to unleash. The end of Wham! in 1986 paved the way for a bold new chapter. George's first solo album, Faith, arrived in 1987 and exploded onto the charts. It blended rock, R&B, and gospel influences, anchored by his own songwriting and production. The title track, with its infectious guitar riff and swaggering vocal, became an anthem of the era. Father Figure and One More Try revealed a deeper, more soulful side, each earning top spots on the U.S. Billboard Hot 100. By the close of the decade, Faith had sold over 25 million copies worldwide and won the Grammy for Album of the Year in 1989. No longer the shy boy behind Wham's playful image, George crafted a new visual identity: leather jacket stubble, sunglasses, projecting adult confidence and sexuality. But the real transformation happened in the studio, where he insisted on writing, producing, and performing most tracks himself. Each hit was meticulously layered, from the tight harmonies in Father Figure to the crisp, danceable beats of Faith. His creative control was nearly absolute, and the results were undeniable. Chart dominance across continents, critical acclaim, and a fan base that spanned generations. In these years, George Michael proved he was more than a pop star. He was an artist at the height of his powers, setting the bar for what a solo act could achieve. In 1990, George Michael made a decision that stunned the music industry. Instead of appearing in the video for his new single, he handed the spotlight to a group of supermodels: Naomi Campbell, Cindy Crawford, Linda Evangelista, Christy Turlington, and Tatiana Patitz. The freedom. 90 videos set fire to the image he had built with Faith, literally burning the leather jacket, jukebox, and guitar that had become his trademarks. This was no accident. George wanted freedom to let the music speak without the distraction of his face or body. He refused to promote "Listen" without prejudice. Volume 1, with interviews or tours, and Sony, his label, pushed back hard. Sales lagged behind Faith, and the tension boiled over. While the world watched supermodels lip-sync his lyrics, George was fighting a much bigger battle behind closed doors. In 1992, he sued Sony in the UK High Court, calling his contract professional slavery and accusing the label of failing to support his creative vision. The case dragged on for 2 years, with headlines painting him as both a rebel and a troublemaker. All the while, grief shadowed his every move. His partner Anselmo Falepa had died from an AIDS-related illness, a loss George kept private, but which shaped his songwriting and sense of isolation. On June 21, 1994, the High Court ruled against him. The judge found the contract lawful, and George was left with mounting legal costs and the weight of public defeat. For years, he refused to record new music for Sony. His career effectively stalled. The fight cost him millions and took a toll on his health and spirit, but the stand he took against the machine, for the right to define himself, echoed through the industry. For George Michael, the price of autonomy was steep, but he never backed down from the fight to be heard on his own terms. In July 2010, George Michael's Range Rover crashed into a shopfront in Hampstead after midnight. Police found him dazed behind the wheel, admitting he had smoked cannabis and taken a prescription sedative. He was arrested at the scene, and a blood test confirmed drugs in his system. That September, a London court sentenced him to 8 weeks in prison for driving under the influence and for drug possession. He served about 4 weeks before being released on parole, and his license was suspended for 5 years. The judge pointed to a pattern of risk, calling his drug use a danger to the public and to himself. Less than a year later, in November 2011, George was rushed to an intensive care unit in Vienna with severe pneumonia. Doctors described his condition as life-threatening. He spent weeks in the intensive care unit fighting for survival. When he finally left the hospital, he spoke of being close to death. The toll on his body was clear, and those close to him saw how fragile he had become. On Christmas morning 2016, George Michael's partner, Fadi Fawaz, found him unresponsive in bed at their home in Goring-on-Thames. Emergency services were called just before 2 in the afternoon, and George was pronounced dead at the scene. The news stunned fans and the music world, but the cause of his death was not immediately clear. Weeks of speculation followed as the initial post-mortem proved inconclusive. On March 7, 2017, the senior coroner for Oxfordshire released the official verdict. George Michael died of dilated cardiomyopathy with myocarditis and fatty liver. The report confirmed his death was from natural causes, ending public uncertainty and ruling out foul play or overdose. In the days after, stories began to surface about the scale of his private generosity. Charities like Childline and the Terrence Higgins Trust confirmed he had quietly donated millions over the years, supporting children's services and HIV and AIDS work without seeking publicity. Even in death, the full reach of his kindness came into view, revealing a legacy far deeper than the music alone. George Michael's voice still fills streaming charts decades after his prime. As new generations rediscover his music, the conversation about fame, privacy, and vulnerability remains urgent. His legacy isn't just in records sold, it's in the courage to be seen. What does that mean today? Let's talk about it.